I think they're racing against a time clock here, and the October event is what it is that you're seeing, I'm feeling, I see it in the heavens. Everything's racing toward that with all these like mini steps in between. So you ask yourself, why is the economy collapsing? Why now? They could have done this at any time. They could reset the BRICS nations. They were ready to go many years ago. Why wait now? That's the whole thing. Why now this year? Cryptocurrency was the same. Do you think the computing capacity, we didn't have that in like 1990 to run blockchain, to run Bitcoin? But we had the computer power. We had the contract writing capability. No one ever came up with it. Until when? The birth of Bitcoin. Why then? Oh, for this transition period now, when we're getting into CBDCs, they've already programmed your mind. A lot of people understand crypto now. But what are the chances of all of these parallel narratives and parallel things that need to change on a dime are all in play right now up to this year?
We nailed it again. Yeah, we've been talking about it for years. And I know many of you have taken advantage of the opportunity, and many of you still are. Gold, silver, smoking hot. So check this out. Here's some statistics on gold. It's gone up more than 81% in the last 5 years, almost 20% in the last 12 months. And it's happening. Central banks are ditching the US dollar, and US treasuries are buying more gold. What is the good news? Well, there's plenty of good news, especially for those of you that call Noble Gold Investments, because it's still predicted to go up a lot more. Now, there's never any guarantees, so follow what the money funders are doing, and they're still buying gold at a record pace. The UBS even said it would go up to $5,000. Noble Gold, their phone is ringing off the hook. Good news is there's somebody there that will help you from start until the completion of your purchase. And if you qualify, if you start a new account with Noble Gold Investments, they will gift you a standard gold 1/4 ounce coin to add to your collection. That's a nice addition to anybody's collection. Give them a call, 1-877-646-5347. Go to leapprojectgold.com. You can also go to noblegoldinvestments.com. They're giving free ebooks for Leap Project listeners. They have great pricing on gold and silver also. I have a lot of friends that have been purchasing silver from Noble Gold Investments from like pre-60 dimes, silver dimes and quarters, which are about 90% silver. They've been stacking their banks that way. There's a ton of great opportunities right now, and there's a lot of upside, folks. There's a ton of upside. So give them a call, click the links, just go to leapprojectgold.com and or noblegoldinvestments.com. Give them a call, 877-646-5347. You will thank me later. And let's get back to this presentation right now.
But outside the Five Eyes Western nations, they're asking people to buy gold and actively encouraging. And here's another thing, since I got back, Rex, let me tell you. All right, so in Taiwan, Huangjingdou, which is like a gold bean, it's a gram of gold, so they call it a gold bean. Even have these cute little piggy banks that are all glass, real small ones, because grams of gold aren't very big. So when you put your gram of gold in the piggy bank, you can actually see the gold through the glass. And gold's very addictive. Once you start touching it, seeing it, you want more. So during the Lunar New Year there, and in China for the Chinese New Year, they were encouraging people to buy gold to give as gifts. Get a gram of gold for a gift. Chinese New Year's coming, Lunar New Year's coming around. All of Asia, everybody was talking gold this time. So that was during the beginning of the year. China was encouraging its citizens to buy gold. And you know what? Just this last week, they're like, stop buying the gold. Our central bank needs to buy the gold now. Buy silver. And that was just last week. So you're telling me you got all of Asia encouraging their citizens to buy precious metals. And we're sitting back here pumping pieces of paper. So what's coming at the end of the year? A lot of people can, war this, alien invasion that, a Trump card this, what planet's bent. But what if it truly is the electromagnetic frequency from our sun's changing? The potentiality of that drift is out to the outer planets, and we go right through the center of that. Even if it's a day, maybe it's two, maybe it's just an hour, maybe it's a second, but whatever turns on or whatever abilities we're, imagine if we go through that for 3 straight days. Maybe that's the 3 days of darkness they reference is all the programming, the narrative that you've ever had built in your entire life evaporates and disappears for those days in a different electromagnetic field. And you see the world for what it is, truly, those leaders, what they look. You can see their dark auras, you can see the evil in them. Once you saw that, you could never unsee it, ever.
Yeah, I want to hear what
About
you
the
might
information.
think too. I am super looking forward to this. Ladies and gentlemen, how the heck are you? Beautiful evening out here in Southern Colorado. It's been like 4 seasons a day still. It's the middle of May and it feels like it's the middle of April. But regardless, we've got a lot to talk about. So, David just got back from a world tour, literally, and he went to several countries and he has seen major inflation and the government's telling in multiple nations telling their citizens to buy at least 1 gram of gold. I find that interesting and pretty cool. But what in the heck is going on, man? First of all, I got to say, it seems like every time there's an election, there seems to be a lot of chaos that ensues before, during, and after. Let's hope not, but it appears so. I was watching some protests from the Vietnam War and happening before certain elections. And I was like, man, it's weird how cyclical these things are sometimes, but great to see it.
Thanks. All the chaos. We got to keep our guy in power so he can solve all the problems. Tone it down again for the world. Yeah, it always is like that. Hey, I had a quick question for you. Dennis, a guy that I know down in Texas, said same thing. It's kind of wet. It's kind of dreary. It's kind of cold, damp. It seems like the wrong season. I'm saying in Tennessee, it's the exact same. It's like at least 2 seasons are hanging in the air. Cold, damp, like down into the bones. And you're telling me in Colorado, it's the exact same. 3 spots. I can verify just right here that that's strange.
I mean, it's kind of normal for Colorado, especially out here, but it does seem a little bit cooler than usual. The peaks have been getting snow, and northern Colorado is still getting tagged with a bunch of snow. But what is normal anymore with the weather? It seems like things really started to change. I noticed a huge shift around the year 2000, 2003, around there. But
Oh, that far back, really? Okay.
yeah, yeah, but it's just getting weirder every
Really?
year
Okay.
now. It's not. I mean, it's not getting more. It seems to be getting more bizarre as the days go on, doesn't it?
Yeah, let me ask you then, when did your first noticing of bizarreness in, okay, you noticed the change, but when did you notice the extremes of the bizarres? Like what year did you notice? Oh, that's really like way different than it's ever been. When was that?
Oh man, around 2009, because
Oh,
I just noticed a lot of patterns with certain contrails in the skies, and that was in San Antonio at the time, and then I did a trip to Colorado Springs in 2013 for work, and I was like walking with my coworkers in the daytime, and we were getting ready to go to work, and we're looking up at the skies, and stuff is just literally falling from the skies like dust.
dust.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was
So you actually
bizarre.
equated those two and really started to put it together in 2009. A lot of people are just learning about that now with the Dubai floods and all this, and China doing it so frequently too. People are starting to take listen to that. Yeah, they really can bend the weather by cloud seeding and aerial disbursement of nanometals and whatnot to heat, to bend patterns, to make it rain. That's like it's viable now.
Yeah.
Kenya did the same thing. They were doing some cloud seeding down there and they had massive floods. And there was one other country in Africa did it, Southern Africa, big floods afterward. And they were like pointing the finger at the guy or the company that said they were going to do it to bring more rain to the region. Reminds me of that same story that happened. I think it was in San Francisco or somewhere close to there. The city was going to pay a gentleman during the was it the Dust Bowl to make it rain using silver iodide. Well, he did it so well that it flooded the town and cost like back then millions of dollars of damage. They're like, we're not paying you. You got to pay us. You flooded the town, dude, to the point of millions of dollars of damage. And we only wanted you to rain a little bit, but you got out of control, you know? So who knows what they're going to do with the weather?
It, clearly, if you can control the weather, then you control so many aspects of the not only political spectrum, but the corporate spectrums. You pretty much control the world if you control the weather. You wouldn't need to send troops anywhere. You could just push a few buttons with your satellites if that was the case. But clearly, folks, we're just talking hypothetical here. And Um, Regardless, I think we're kind of going off topic. I want to hear about your
No, but it
experience.
does right. Okay, let's leave that as a point. So we're going to connect some
Okay.
dots tonight. So leave that as point number one. Like we're trying to put that thing with geoengineering, controlling the weather and control food, and this whole thing. We'll leave that as point one. So we're going to try to wrap around and loop it back into the bottom of that, and then it'll make a complete circle. Kind of when we're talking.
Yeah, yeah, I
I
like
think that's
that.
what we're trying to get at. Is there's so many connected pieces, but they all seem as they're disconnected as a single dot. But when you start to weave the story through, you can start to connect dots that then make threads, and those threads then turn into a tapestry. So we're just trying to connect a thread for you tonight of different points, and away we go. Yeah,
That
back to the
tapestry is
inflation, I
now
guess.
that
How was
tapestry
that?
is now art.
Yeah.
It's now art, man. It's art from David Dubine. So, how did you get the opportunity? How many different countries did you just go visit?
Croatia and Italy. Drove through Slovenia. That doesn't count, but we stopped in Ljubljana for a minute there. Taiwan and Japan and Hungary. So here's the thing. We took Turkish Airlines, and I also got to go into Istanbul. And the airport's like so. This is another thing. So I wanted to tell you about my travels because what I saw is the emergence of bricks out there in real time, real life, bigger than life, Hollywood-esque, and the rest of the planet's doing that, going that direction, and we're like withering on the vine here. Turkish Airlines had a you're flying to places like we were going to Asia to check the Lunar New Year over in Taiwan. But as you're going in both directions, they allowed you one free, like a little intercontinental hop there. So you go to Istanbul, to somewhere in Asia, or sorry, excuse me, somewhere in Europe, and then you pop back to Istanbul again. So we flew up to Zagreb, and then that was our trip back, and then we flew over to Taipei. But on the same way coming back, we were in Istanbul, and we jumped up to Hungary, and then we flew back to Istanbul, then back to the States. So I got to see, that's only a few countries, really. But half of them had experienced incredible inflation, so much inflation that would have rocked our country to shreds by now. It would be the number one political talking point. It would be agitation and people on the streets by now if this were to happen to our country. I saw it in three. Half the countries I went to had this happening to it. So it's not like a rare thing. And it's happening all across the EU too. So Croatia, they had a native currency called the kuna. And when we traveled there originally, they only used the kuna, and they were just getting into maybe some places would take euros as payment. But now it's the complete opposite. They went to 100% euros, no more kuna. And it was pre-COVID and then post-COVID that we went. And everything had doubled in price, doubled. So the restaurant owners were talking about they were pissed because they had to pay so much for the food. And there's this interoperable intertrade agreement in the Eurozone where the squid I could have got in a restaurant in Croatia caught in the Adriatic Sea could no longer 100% be sourced from around that region or even in Italy. It had to be equally distributed. So if they had shrimp and squid, it was coming from a place like Spain and Portugal. They had to ship it all the way across the EU to get it over to Croatia. So it makes no sense. They're talking about green agenda in this, but they make you buy products artificially to stimulate the economy of another Eurozone nation. Then you have to artificially import their product. It just doesn't make sense. So everything was double in the price, double. So imagine an American going 100%. What would that do to our economy? That was the thing. And then I went to Japan. And before, when I was in Japan, the exchange rate was 100 to 1. And this time it was 148 or 152 because we took money out and the exchange rate was on there. And I was just shocked. So their currency devalued 50%. Can you imagine the American dollar devaluing 50% of whatever you buy is twice as expensive? Or another way to look at it, your dollar only buys half of what it did just weeks ago. And then on the way back, we went to Hungary. And Hungary is experiencing 10% food inflation per month. So we arrived in April, in the middle of April, and they were saying that since the beginning of the year, 40% increase. And then when we were there, they're saying absolutely next month's going to be 10%. So they're looking at 50% food inflation. So imagine at the end of the year, that'd be 1.2 times higher if it stays on the same trajectory. It really made me think about, all right, what if that happens here? Those three scenarios are all in play in other countries around the world. So think about role play it What would that do to our country if any of those scenarios were to happen? And then you could go off on your different, spokes of a wheel and say, if they did, this could happen. Again, it comes down to the food. The food is a weapon, the inflation, control the resource, control the populace.
So yeah, I went to Durango. I worked in Durango, which is about 65 miles away. So I was driving about an hour and 15 minutes each way. During the process, I managed to I had a wild turkey fly into my windshield. It was like a cannonball, and I had a deer run into me. I mean, it's a pretty sketchy stretch of road, but the reason I bring this up is it would cost me to go to work by the time I went and got lunch, if I didn't pack my lunch, it cost me 40, $50. You're literally out. If you want to go get just like a plain latte with a couple shots of espresso and some milk or some oat milk, it's now $8 plus $2 tip, so $10. If you want to get a turkey sandwich, literally a turkey sandwich, not the wild turkey that runs into your window, but if you want to get a turkey sandwich or a sandwich at Jimmy John's, it's 10, $11. By the time you add a bag of chips and a drink, you're out $15. If you want it delivered, you're out $20 for a sandwich and a bag of chips. So, I mean, hasn't it already kind of doubled out here, man? It's freaking nuts. It cost me $50 just to go to work a day. It's crazy. And 2.5 hours on top of the podcast.
Yeah, the time. You need to start having a little camera so you can talk while you're driving. I see a lot of people do that. They try to take advantage of that time, consolidating thoughts in the car. So what did you think of it going back out into the world again and seeing people and dealing with like people coming in and you trying to overcome their objections and, walk them through?
Well, I mean, when somebody's coming in to look
like these more, I can't, for me, that whole office setting and thing again, I don't know.
Well, I didn't think I'd be able to do it either, but luckily I was at a 20,000 square foot furniture store with 2 stories, and I only had to deal with a couple other salespeople. And so I could just run around the store all day and, with my running shoes on, literally I would help customers out. I'd run upstairs and people loved me and I loved them. And it was great. It's a great experience, man. I met a lot of really cool people. I'll tell you, but I'm thinking about it. If it wasn't like that, like if I had to go into a certain setting where I had to be around a bunch of other people constantly, or if the environment was a little bit different, it would have been a lot more difficult for me. I mean, that in and of itself was difficult for me. And I was really good at it in just a few months. You know what I mean? So like they had the best April ever with me there in April. So, but the whole time I'm there, I'm like, this isn't my passion. My passion is helping people, creating content, talking about the world and helping be the change the world needs to see, right? Unlocking doors, unlocking ideas, talking about things that might happen in the future that we can hopefully offset. And that's what we're doing. We're also talking about what's going on right now, which is wild. And I don't know. So I think something big is going to happen May 18th, whether or not it's good or bad, or, I don't know, but something big is going to happen. And the Vatican is actually releasing a update on supernatural contact the 17th, the day before. I thought that was pretty interesting. Supernatural contact guidelines by the Vatican.
The planets are lining up. They're going to square themselves. The gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are going to be into a near perfect square October 24 of 2024, like just months from now. This square formation has not been seen since 79 AD. We have the sun, the earth, and the 4 gas giants electromagnetically intertwining. So what happens when the earth comes through? Are we going to have abilities that suddenly raise 10x where we can actually intuitively feel or know what people are thinking? Or why are all these superhero shows and movies come out over the last 10 years? Are they preparing your mind, pre-programming you to understand that people have telepathy, instant manifestation capabilities, instantaneous creation of fire, superhuman strength or superhuman speed? I mean, what happens when we come into a different electromagnetic field? That, I think, is the game changer, and one of the reasons that we're seeing all of this political destruction, economic destruction, societal destruction is they need an interference pattern in there where people are so busy, so distracted, so distraught, caught up in this like mashing fear ball that they don't understand that their abilities have uprisen where they can actually use them to a different extent now and uproot this darkness that pervades our planet. Brain, you could probably short circuit that perception change of the world or the bending or morphing of what we would consider the matrix at a faster speed than usually thought does with action and goals, like you say. I think they're racing against a time clock here, and the October event is what it is that you're seeing, I'm feeling, I see it in the heavens. Everything's racing toward that with all these like mini steps in between. So you ask yourself, why is the economy collapsing? Why now? They could have done this at any time. They could reset the BRICS nations. They were ready to go many years ago. Why wait now? That's the whole thing. Why now this year? All this could have been done years and years ago. Cryptocurrency was the same. Do you think the computing capacity, we didn't have that in like 1990 to run blockchain, to run Bitcoin? But we had the computer power. We had the contract writing capability. No one ever came up with it. Until when? The birth of Bitcoin. Why then? Oh, for this transition period now, when we're getting into CBDCs, they've already programmed your mind. A lot of people understand crypto now. But what are the chances of all of these parallel narratives and parallel things that need to change on a dime are all in play right now up to this year? So what's coming at the end of the year? A lot of people can, war this, alien invasion that, a Trump card this, what planet's bent. But what if it truly is the electromagnetic frequency from our sun's changing? The potentiality of that drift is out to the outer planets, and we go right through the center of that. Even if it's a day, maybe it's two, maybe it's just an hour, maybe it's a second, but whatever turns on or whatever abilities were. Imagine if we go through that for 3 straight days. Maybe that's the 3 days of darkness. They references all the programming, the narrative that you've ever had built in your entire life evaporates and disappears for those days in a different electromagnetic field. And you see the world for what it is, truly, those leaders, what they look. You can see their dark auras. You can see the evil in them. Once you saw that, you could never unsee it, ever. And the world will absolutely change those days. So why are they so hell-bent on stopping everybody from having conversations about these important issues, and you're not allowed to see things anymore on media? What is it that they're trying to, I look at that statue where it's like this and cover everything. So you're going to go blindly marching through this. I don't know. It's the best way I can explain it. This event's coming. They know it. A lot of people know it. It's the intuitive feeling and all these other steps in between it, like this May 18th thing.
Well, you think that the October 4th alignment of the 4 large
24th.
Okay, so October 24th, that the way that the planetary bodies will be aligned in conjunction with the Earth, you see that being a day that will literally like activate people?
No activation. It is what it is. It's just the capabilities of our brains to perceive reality differently. That functionality of whatever it is, those interconnections, you're going to see more, you're going to hear more. Maybe out of the sides of your eyes, the auditory range should raise a little bit, and people are going to behave a little bit differently.
I remember you talking about this date a couple of years ago, even. You're saying, and
Same date.
Yeah,
Same date.
right. So clearly, this is something that's been on your mind for quite some time. And I would like to know more about that. So, why do you think that because of the way that the planetary bodies will be located, that it's going to change the electrical field enough on the planet, basically, to create this new understanding almost, or seeing things like you said? I'm thinking of the film They Live, but without the sunglasses. Like, people aren't going to need the sunglasses. And as you said, once you see that, it's a lot difficult to unsee it, if even possible. maybe years of hypnosis, and I don't know, but being sarcastic here. Your thoughts?
That's true. Yeah, that was a better way to sum it up. I didn't even think of using that example. That's right. That's exactly right. Like the perceptions, the way you perceive it, like all those control systems that have held us down. You have to think about the Vatican in the 1400s, since you were talking Vatican. Um, like the control system the Vatican used to control society at that point, would that work today? Of course not. Nobody would accept it. It's too barbaric. It's too this. It's too that. There's no way. That's old school. That's so ancient. You'd never, it wouldn't even exist in the vibratory path. You couldn't hold state. That's the whole thing. It couldn't hold state. That control mechanism today is so dark and heavy that it can't exist because the frequency field won't let it exist. We are doing the exact same thing as we move to this new frequency ourselves here. So these systems that used to control us are no longer valid. That's why we're moving to central bank digital currencies with the economy. That's why they're moving to the track and trace. That's why they're moving to the social credit scores. They need to. The vibratory field's moving upward. So these new systems that vibrate faster, they're almost instantaneous. Need to catch up. They're trying to pre-place it. So we're going to rise up into that and it'll capture us again once more. I see nothing but cycles again and again. Now, these cycles come around every 400 years or so. You think that weather systems upsetting and changing is just random happenstance in this exact same year that the currency is changing, governments are collapsing, world war on the cusp, and all this is happening in the same exact trajectory and timeline on this same year. That's insane too, that you can't just sit there and look at all these things happening in unison and it's just because what? Like the noticeable weather changes now are so far beyond anybody getting explained away from CO2. Now they're starting to get a little scared of weather, the size of the hail, the ferocity of the winds, just the rains, the record rains and the floods and the biblical just rivers from the sky right now on top of all of this.
Man,
Control the masses, man. Control the masses through a natural cycle that you know is going to upset society and rip it shreds anyway for civilization. Take me through it. How would you control them? We're starting to see it now, and you would know. We're right here. You can no longer mask it. We're at the point now where the crop losses are going to be coming this year. Brazil was the final kingpin that just got knocked out. That was the supplier for everybody else. You're going to watch the things happen in the markets this year too. Food's going to be a #1 story at the end of the year. So you can't hide it anymore. I'm just trying to make the point. Now control the populace.
I mean, if you have another way that you could control things would be time. So if you could find a way to take a long nap, maybe a year, maybe 50 years, but not age, like a cryogenic type chamber, then imagine the influence you could have if you set if you planted all the seeds for that time and then you wake up afterwards. That would be something that I find fascinating as far as control goes. But let's talk about this for a minute. We're going to take this a little deeper because when I go back, even just as a kid growing up, a lot of the stuff that we talk about now, I knew. I was talking about it when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult. And I don't know how I knew about a lot of this stuff because it just kind of came to me. But one of the theories that I had and still do is the powers that be know about the cycle timeline. Like there's a certain code that if you are a part of particular bloodlines and you have to be a part of a particular order of that bloodline even, then you might be given this knowledge of timelines, when events take place. And if you can influence time by not aging as much or by living longer through genetics, then you could see these unfold. And it appears to me with the research that I have done, there is absolutely a controlling faction behind the scenes that manipulates the world through various aspects. And this is with the bloodlines. And you can even read about certain, like Enki and Ninmah, that story of Enki and Ninmah. I think that has got the details of when the Anunnaki actually gave birth to a human child. And that's where the bloodlines started. And they created their empires. and their dynasties, and maybe some of them kind of stayed here, maybe some of them took long naps, and maybe some of them took off and then they're coming back. But this 2030 timeline seems to have some significance, whether or not they're going to admit in 2030. But I think something's happening. And maybe it has something to do with this Foursquare you're referring to, this 2024, October 24th date. May 18th, there's going to be a big event that takes place that day as well. They're smart, man. They know. They've done this before. I think they've probably done it on multiple planets. I don't think it's like the first. They've probably done it on this planet multitudes of times as well. Many times. How would you have a zodiac? How would you have the knowledge of the zodiac, Will? A 24,000 year cycle. How many times would you have to live through that cycle to have that much information and detail to create it?
At least twice, so you know it's a cycle. Probably a third time to verify that it was actually a cycle.
At least.
At least, yeah. I'm just saying bare minimum. Like you would at minimum have to do that. First, you'd have to like replicate it, watch it one more time, and go, all right, it matched. All right, well, we can't guarantee it. Let's just watch it one more time. We'll see if it matches. But who's got 75,000 years to sit around and map that out? Obviously, some civilization that's been here far longer than us.
Technology could do it.
Technology, yeah, in itself is a vibration, is it not?
So
It's the
maybe
speed of
now,
electricity. It's the
yeah.
speed of thought. I'm really in the construct of it all. What is it? We have both on the planet. We can shoot memories, thoughts, voices, everything's down a line now. And we have electricity that goes down lines now too. So if you think about just the way basic biology works, those are your senses. Could not some build off of that and be hyper intelligent? What if this thing that was here was, I don't know, 23 million years old or 15 million years old? Would we know it was here even? Or would we be birthed into it and we would think it was what we understand as the world? Depends if you're going to look at the technology. I know it's just a mind experiment, because how far back really does it go? Because you think about the ice ages. So we've been through what? 4 ice ages as the Homo sapiens sapiens been here. 10,000 years of warmth on average between the ice ages. So we've had 2 prior times where the humans are just like us. So what did they invent? Where did they go? What did they do? We can't find a single remnant from either prior ice ages, or they have, and absolutely it's hidden from public view because it's just cycles, really. If you go back in time, I mean, I wonder what the Homo sapiens were like 320,000 years ago in an interglacial.
Well, I can certainly say this. The more research I do into the Sumerian tablets, the Babylonian stuff, the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Hebrew teachings, the Native Americans, the Mayans, like it seems like most of these stories, even the oldest ones, aren't older than 8,000 years old. There might be stories that are talking about times before then, but the stories themselves, the oldest ones we have, like that are either etched in stone or wood that got stuck in mud or on walls or whatever, they're about 8,000 years old, but they talk of times way before then. But if we look at these megaliths and certain megalithic structures and the way that they were built, it appears that there was clearly a race of beings much larger than we are, much more advanced, and they're not here anymore. There might be their like offspring, the hybrids that we talked about, but they were so far above and beyond. Even like you read about some of these kings, for example. I just found a tablet that I want to do a podcast on. That's been around for some
Hey, look,
time.
can I show you this picture? You want
Yeah.
to show me a tablet? Why don't I show you? This is a picture of Rome, a painting actually, from the 1500s of Rome. Do you see a mud flood there? That's the Colosseum as we understand Rome.
Okay.
Not even 400 years ago. Or, well, yeah, 400 and what, 30 years ago?
And since then, there's like more there's more mud out there now, or Is that what you're
Well, no,
saying?
that's the Roman Colosseum that you see Roman holiday and everything, right? In the
Yeah.
middle of Rome, downtown, that's the Colosseum. But it's got 10 feet of mud in front of it and hills.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like a hill. It looks like just like a grass hill or something.
Well, it was flooded, and then obviously weeds grow on top of
Yeah.
mud or dirt, and then you got a whole. It was there not enough people back then. It was too much to dig it out. You got to think about that too. What you're talking about, those stories, that's post cataclysm. Pre cataclysm, what was there? They were coming out of the Ice Age anyway, which is an interesting fact because let's use your 8,000 years here. Our present interglacial, let's say it stabilized 8,000 years ago. So we've had a chance in these last 8,000 years to develop the society where we are from hunter-gatherer, quote unquote, right to where we are in the rocket age and the space age and satellite age. 8,000 years. Because why? We have had a stable climate. I know there's been up and downs in there, but let's say stable climate. We know where the grow zones are. We know as far north as we can grow food, as far south as we can grow food. We've kind of wired it out. This is a hot climate. That's a warm climate. It's a medium climate. It took us 8,000 years to do that. Now, as we descended into the ice age, climate would have stabilized somewhere around 80,000 years ago. I'll be generous and say 70,000 years ago. And it didn't come out of that climate optimum back then until what, about 18,000 years ago? So you're telling me from 20,000 years ago to 80,000 years ago, 60,000 years of stable climate. What could they have built or become? I mean, we have had 8,000 years, and look where we've come up to. They had 50,000 years of stable climate to create a society and civilization that knew where the grow zones, the maximum north latitude, maximum southern latitude where they could grow food. They understand where it hot was. They understood the medium or the temperate crop zones. And then it stabilized like that for 60,000 years. Okay. We don't know anything except legends from Solon or something. We might find a megalith scattered about after a cataclysm. What did they really have that's being hidden from us? And see, this is why in the beginning we were talking about these cycles coming around again. If you knew the cycle was here and it would shred your civilization, you would print to infinitum. It would never matter. You're never going to pay it back anyway. You would try to get as many supplies you could for continuity of government because there's some safe locations on the planet that are earmarked already. But you couldn't alert the citizenry that all their store shelves are going to run bare for a while because the governments around the world are going to stockpile. I mean, for hundreds of millions, if not a billion people for years on end. And we're going to stockpile out all over there. We're going to freeze, dry everything, put it over there. Your store shelves are going to run bare for a while. Gee, we need an excuse. And we need an excuse for never-ending money printing also, so nobody will even bat an eye if we double the money supply on the planet or even triple the money supply on the planet. In a year or two, nobody will even blink an eye. And then we got to keep everybody home. What would that be? I forgot what that. Oh, yeah. Now look at all those things happening in fashion, and you're telling me right on the same timelines when this October event is coming up that we just ran through the vid that reset everything for the entire planet, even including going to work. Like it's almost unthinkable for people to go back to work again. Really, everybody's been working from home for so long. It's hard to go back to work, back to the office. Perceived enemies everywhere, but it seems like all governments are like a school of fish these days. If you understood it was a global event, all governments would work in unison together, would they not? So we just start to see the global economy in unison shifting. Gold backed currency, real world asset, tokenization of all assets, which brings us back to that fast moving central bank digital currency blockchain application for all monies moving forward. I don't know. It's too quirky for me to believe that everything's happening and all leading right to this year, and there's not something going on. So you're looking at the economy and finance too. That plugs right into it. Right into it.
Look over here. Look, we got to worry about this boogeyman. No, it's the boogeyman over there. No. It's Count Dracula. No. It's we've got a chupacabra that we got to worry about. No, we got to worry about them over there. That's like three-headed gargantuan dragon people over there. They're the scary ones. Like
You
seriously,
magic mushroom worshiping, do you get out of here?
man. The fungus. Yeah. So what do you think about like how do we really know? Because most people don't. I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of these people at specific like very high levels don't even know they're being played.
Well, you're at the point now where it doesn't really even matter because you're either getting ready for the event coming up or you're not. And see, that's the whole thing is they're trying to keep everybody back to the complacency again. They're trying to keep you away from going back to becoming self-sufficient, getting out, working with the community, growing some food, getting a farm together, whatever, piece of land, doing something, raising something, growing something. They're not even, they're trying to persuade you that everything's going back to normal, except that thing in the Middle East. Everything else is normal, pretty much, except the collapsing real estate, banking, and derivatives market. Except that, now we're all good. And then just, it's good. Just get back and life's going back to normal again. Food will be everywhere. It's the message they're giving you when things are falling apart at the seams here. I think the whole messaging is if you're not getting ready, then that's kind of on you because there were so many messages out there that it was more than time to change your lifestyle a little bit to get more self-sufficient and off centralized systems. If you didn't get the messaging already after, I'm sorry. If you didn't get the message after the start of a near global war between attacking in the Middle East, which is biblical prophecy, if you didn't get to that little edge of things yet in the collapsing global economy, if you're not, that doesn't really do anything for you, where you might not be able to work, you might not be able to access your ATMs. At what point do you maybe think, I should think about putting a garden in this year? I mean, how many points of largeness would it take to awaken people? Because I look around and even after all these things that are occurring currently, like present time, and all the things that occurred in the last few years, they're just like, oh, what's on the game on Sunday? Yeah, yeah. I'm like, what? Okay. Let's hire the gardener. You're going to go trim the bushes. All right, well, trim the bushes. Where's your food? I'll just go to the supermarket and I'll get it. Like, what? There's a disconnect here. I really believe it is. I was going somewhere with the point, except it all rolls back to food again. So try to redirect me. You know my thought process.
Well, let's go to Taiwan for a minute. What was it like in Taiwan?
Everywhere outside the States was like booming. You could just feel it. You could like I was sitting next to people and they were like going to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And before you'd be like, going to Miami, I'm going to, so like think of the hottest destination in your lifetime that you could be going to where everybody knew. And when you say it, they're like, oh yeah, you're going there. But they're going, yeah, we're going to Riyadh, and just like super excited, like, boom, high five, Riyadh. Like it is pumping outside of these Western nations. The world is running away with wealth, opulence, expansion, debts, and they're just to the next level. We're inside here, everybody's defaulting on debt, the debt's getting reset. But out there, see, nothing collapses to zero. So when all this reset does come, even if it is a natural cycle that causes it to go to zero, they already have a place set up where all the debt's going to get restructured, and then they just start the system over almost instantly. And it's ready to go. Literally, copy paste, boom, day one. All right. Well, World Bank, no, the Bank for International Settlements, they'll fund it all. Just start the system again. It's the same families that have been in power for how long that have trillions and trillions of dollars. Of course, they're going to reset the system under their rules again. Then a new location, natural cycle. It's going to take it out anyway. I'm sorry. There's really nothing anybody can do except ride through, accept it, understand it, know what the triggers are, look for those changes, and then just check the next thing. Okay, great. And then getting this much closer, this much closer. Okay, we're going to roll through this. All right, it's over then. Once it rolls through, it's over. But then they're not over. They're just restarting and resetting after you are, cascaded back in time of your lifestyle because you didn't get ready for anything. But outside the Five Eyes Western nations, they're asking people to buy gold and actively encouraging. And here's another thing, since I got back, Rex, let me tell you. All right, so in Taiwan, Huangjingdou, which is like a gold bean, it's a gram of gold, so they call it a gold bean. Even have these cute little piggy banks that are all glass, real small ones, because grams of gold aren't very big. So when you put your gram of gold in the piggy bank, you can actually see the gold through the glass. And gold's very addictive. Once you start touching it, seeing it, you want more. So during the Lunar New Year there, and in China for the Chinese New Year, they were encouraging people to buy gold to give as gifts. Get a gram of gold for a gift. Chinese New Year's coming. Lunar New Year's coming around. All of Asia, everybody was talking gold this time. So that was during the beginning of the year. China was encouraging its citizens to buy gold. And you know what? Just this last week, they're like, stop buying the gold. Our central bank needs to buy the gold now. Buy silver. And that was just last week. So you're telling me you got all of Asia encouraging their citizens to buy precious metals. And we're sitting back here pumping pieces of paper. The rest of the world is going to move to trading assets. Like, let's say Rex needs manganese and he's from somewhere in Africa, but I need tin and I'm over here in, let's say, China. You would tokenize that and put it as a smart contract value for whatever your shipment and my shipment as a token. It can go anywhere, and whoever owns that key for that token owns the value of the token. And the base behind it to give it value is a real world asset. So 1,000 tons of manganese has a street value, for a better term, and it's wrapped in that contract. And it's backed by that 1,000 tons laying there on the floor in a warehouse or on a ship. That's how the payments are going to be moved through, because they can agree on a value for that asset or that portion of the asset. And you can swap as much as we could easily swap, and I'll give you $10,000 for this, and you'll flip me 5 back for this, and or 50 million or 100 million, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Instead of using the SWIFT system, they've already got BRICS Pay, and that's alive. That's an alternative parallel system to the SWIFT system. And I'm telling you, these transactions, Dubai was using XRP for little payments like a water bill, these types of things. Now, wealth is going to be transferred using the Ethereum blockchain with real world assets, RWAs. And really, we're talking hundreds of billions, hundreds of millions, any amount of money can be put on this, even as small as coming down to pay your water bill, and all the way for nations, sovereign nations, to settle debt against each other using these same tokenized assets. This is what I saw outside the US. We are so playing kindergarten behind on this. They've already set up a parallel system that's functional. The minute Saudi Arabia comes, I'm going to make another bold call here. The minute Saudi Arabia comes out and says, yes, we will take anything in payment other than, including and other than US dollars, that is the day that the petrodollar dies in earnest. And when that day comes, your world is going to absolutely change. When Saudi Arabia joins BRICS formally, and they're about to, and within the next 90 days, so the word on the street is, and they are going to officially announce that they will take payments in anything, meaning the petrodollar will no longer exist. And that's the world we will live in. And all those dollars are going to come flooding back at the same time. But it's real interesting if they do that within 90 days. So what's that? May, June, July, or let's say they do it, in August or September or August. The fallout from that would take us through the October 2024 event with full-on global collapse of currencies going on left, right, and center. So for me, the closer we get to this planetary event, the larger the weather events are going to become. It's going to get absolutely, and no, I hate to use the word biblical, but I am truly exponentially larger than anything that's possibly imagined. We're going to get to the size of the hailstones that are like that, dropping down. They've already seen some in India that are like that. And geopolitically, it's going to go off the rails. So add all those 3 factors in together, and then you got the food at the end of it. So you can explain the crop losses, not from the natural cycle. Oh, it was the war, it was the economy, it was this, it was that, it was those people, like you said, the 3-headed whatevers. But it's all going to circulate around food, and then, it's going to be about the control of food, because it always is, always has been. That's the thing that destroys the society during this cycle, the lack of food growing capacity or capability, because the times that we plant and harvest are thrown out the window. Temperatures are in the wrong place at the wrong seasons. These huge rivers from the sky, droughts, these kind of mix-ups in the jet streams and cloud cells bunching on each other. This is what really wipes out the society. They can't grow food effectively any longer for a period of time. But you can't tell the citizenry that. Now, Rex, you can't tell the citizens. Now, what are you going to do to try to control them?
I'm gonna do my best to entertain them, man. I'm gonna put on a clown outfit and do Joker, stuff and try and be like, "Hey, look over here, man. Hey, look, I can do the dance and I can do the truffle shuffle." I'd just be, yeah, you're gonna have to keep people in that fight or flight mode. You're gonna have to keep people confused. You're gonna have to keep people scared. You're gonna have to keep people in, some type of fear because once you're in fear, you typically are in fight or flight mode. So you're a lot easier to control that way. Keep them looking at the TV, keep them looking at the sports, keep them looking at the stock market, keep them looking at their blood pressure because it's getting higher and higher because they're freaking out.
And the elites would have to disappear, or that group of helpers that brought us to this point would have to disappear without any explanations or questions being asked. If it were, it would be in the media for a day or two and gone again, never to be asked again. I start to look at how many, the real estate collapsed. None of the C class, C-suite execs can go in anymore. They don't have to, they work from home. The entire top echelon of all corporate, global world corporations, that top C class, they've all just disappeared. Everybody's working from home. Nobody knows. You got a Skype call. Is that even a real person? Is it AI? Who knows? But everybody just kind of disappeared. There's nowhere, you can't even go into offices anymore. Everything's closed. And there you have it. That's it. Now, yeah, if you can't understand that, that's a cycle. A lot of people know it's inbound. We got a date, at least could be the beginning of it. At least it's going to be a trigger, a catalyst for something to amplify. October of 2024. And then you start to look at all of what's been happening since 2020. That's the line of dots of just one single thread in it all. I'm sure there's many more points to connect to it, but at least just in the kind of wide of like low-hanging fruit that you can see, those things, those apples are kind of in a line through the bottom canopy layer there. A lot of things are interconnected, all based on foreknowledge of these cycles and controlling the populace through this change, and also making sure you're in control on the backside. It really boils down to be as simple as that. And you can't tell anybody it's happening, because if it's a natural cycle and they knew you could have warned them 20 years ago, they're not going to accept your new mandates. But if it was all man-made disaster and they tried to do the best they could to stop it and rewrite history after it happens, then what? Well, you got to eat. That's what. What will you do to feed your family? What will you do to eat yourself?
Man, you're asking some great questions, and I think people need to start asking those questions more often. And folks, don't be scared. Just be prepared.
That's right. Be
You know?
prepared. Absolutely get prepared. That's the whole thing. If you're not prepared, you're going to get stuck with whatever they ask you to do, force you to do, make you do that you might not want to, but you're going to have to just to stay alive. But if you have a fighting chance outside that, where the physical thing, I got a handful of lettuce, what would you give me for it? I got 2 dozen duck eggs, what will you give me for it? And if I don't, if 2 dozen's not enough, and maybe I need something that costs me $500. Let's say you actually have something that is value that we both established is $500. And I'll say, I will trade you duck eggs. I know I can't give you all that at the same time because obviously there's going to be too many duck eggs. But what if I give you, like, how many does your family eat? Okay, 12 a week. I will give you 12 duck eggs a week for how many weeks out to purchase your $500 item. And that would be the way that trade would be done. Because you go to the grocery store every day for weeks and months and years on end, don't you? It's the same thing. You just have to trust the person. It's called trade. Been doing it for thousands of years. Nobody needs to get in the middle and take a percentage because I wanted to trade my lettuce for his eggs. Nobody needs to step in the way of that. That's trading. And having something, whether it's fruit or a skill to do something with food, or a machine or a tool or an implement or a seed or something you can do to exchange trade for food, animal husbandry, like I said, chickens, birds, ducks, whatever. Trading with others, even if you need to buy, Would you have silver, and how do you make change for the silver? I had a discussion with a buddy of mine, Kevin. Like, we have the 1 ounce rounds, and you want to go buy something, but how do you make change with that? And that's what we're trying to roll through right now, is how do you make change for a 1 ounce round? Everybody's got a bar of silver. Everybody got a 1 ounce round. Dude, every a half-ounce round. So I'm like, okay, make me change for a half-ounce round. Well, you're going to have to find some scrap silver somewhere. You're going to have to find some junk, something pre-64 done. And what's equals what? How many grams or how many ounces of copper? Because there's copper coins too. How many copper coins plus some, like, war nickels would that be to equal my change? Like, we're gonna start using copper again too, probably, but in a different form of like ingotized copper, where there's gonna have to be a base asset behind the value of money again. When the system restarts again, they're gonna have to have a real thing behind it to prove that it's worth that much. Because collapsing on a system, the world's largest ever system of fake paper, when it collapses, it's going to be a fair few generations before anybody believes just printing money and a promise will be worth anything. You're going to have to gold back it, silver back it, natural asset back it before anybody's going to believe it. And that's the whole thing. That's why the BRICS is miles ahead of us, because they started doing that before we realized nobody's going to really trust our money if nothing physical is behind it. But if you don't know these simplest of things of like how to get food, how to grow food, how to exchange for food, you're just going to get in a very bad position. So that would be my thing. We've lived through this before, a little preparation. Everybody can learn how to grow food, learn how to work. There's very little time left. You're going to have to be, as they'd say in the South, lickety split on this movement forward of getting ready. We're in the growing season right now. You got a whole summer to grow food here as things get weird, and I really think they will. So Rex, on last question for you, like, give me your timeline on the weirdness for the rest of the year here, because you talk to a lot of people that I don't, and you have a lot of different ideas coming in your way that I don't. So I'm just curious, your weirdness calendar for the rest of the year. Like, you had May 18th is one. Take me down through till Happy New Year 2025.
Yeah, let's do that. Actually, I will. And let me share something with you that I made a set of predictions for this year, but I made them at the end of last year, and many of them have already come to fruition, and they're quite detailed also. David, you're an encyclopedia of knowledge, dude. Thank you so much for being a guest on Leak Project. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing on YouTube. Please become a Patreon member today. Your support greatly helps myself and Leak Project. Also, if you want to listen to the 30 predictions and forecasts for 2024, we've got that on this podcast, as well as a bunch more information David shares with us that's uncensored, only available on our Patreon page. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful day, and be the change you want to see.